to grammar school. We correct your life, not your words. Karen screaming at the sidewalk, drunks doing zigzags on the curb. Never bring a date to a roadside debate. Not cool to drive straight through a parade. No sex, no smoke on that card zoom, fool. Jesus fell, bounced back, now he's watching you. Grady Judd cuffing up the Florida man. Tinder date sees it all. Grammar school, we put you back.
And it's hot.
Choices on the big screen. It's okay.
Hey guys, I decided to do this one as a premiere because if I streamed it, then I would be stepping on some toes of some channels that I just don't want to overlap with tonight. The final portion of the Afroman verdict. Verdict. I got the final testimony, closing arguments, and the verdict, and any follow-up on the verdict if it applies. So I'm not going to comment on this one as much as I usually do. I'm sure you like that. But without further ado,
Are you aware of the posts that were coming out after 2022 about the sheriff's deputies and calling them thieves and that sort of thing? Did you ever see any or hear any of the songs?
Some of my students referred to it when they would say, I saw your husband in the video. And I would say, yeah, that was him, and turn around and walk away. I didn't elaborate on any of that, no. And they didn't either.
Why didn't you elaborate on it?
Because I didn't think it was the student's business.
Okay. So they had seen your husband in videos?
Yes.
And did you tell your husband about that?
About?
That your kids had mentioned it?
No, it was just a mention, and that was it.
Okay. Did you ever, you saw the posts yourselves or videos yourself, or did you just hear about it from kids?
I saw part of it, and then I heard about it.
Okay. And did anyone else in the community ever say anything to you about these videos or posts?
No.
Just your kids?
It was my students in the school.
Students? Okay. The song that Mr. Osborne asked you about, does that song refer to a specific identifiable person?
I don't think so.
Those are all my questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Rhonda, Mr. Klingler asked you about your students.
all right. I know I said I wouldn't say much, but that didn't help the plaintiff much.
Your students saw the posts
Yes.
and they articulated to you?
Yeah. Just say, hey, I saw your husband in this video.
Students can, would it be a fair statement to say children can be mean? Cruel?
Absolutely.
You've seen instances of them being cruel?
Absolutely.
Are they cruel to both other students and teachers?
Yes.
I don't like bringing up sensitive subjects, but has any of your students ever been cruel to you in the past?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Would it be fair to say they've said some pretty mean things?
Yes.
Okay. You see, I'm trying not to ask you what they are, but are they shocking names?
Coming from my students, I mean, in all honesty, it's, you know, when they're mad at me because they didn't receive an A, yeah, they get mad.
And they lash out?
Yes.
But they're not calling names of fact or anything to you?
No, no.
And they've seen these posts.
Yes.
Did your students treat you any differently?
No.
So, could you point to any instance where a student treated you differently due to the posts?
No.
I'm going to ask this question. You said you're sorry to be here. Why are you sorry to be here?
Because from my recollection, my ex-husband had said that this was part of the reason we got divorced.
No further questions, John.
Klingler?
No further questions.
Mr. Osborne, am I right to understand this witness was a lay witness?
Pardon me?
This was a lay witness, not an expert, right?
She's a lay witness to testify to what she would have experienced in this.
Right. And the only reason I did that is to explain to the jury that people sometimes have training experience and can make opinions as experts. The doctor comes in a medical malpractice case, they're an expert. This is a lay person, the same as any other. Some of the questions spoke generally about society and public perceptions, which would seem like more of an expert opinion, when in fact, as a lay witness, she can only testify about what she experienced herself. So you have to understand the scope. She's just what happened to her, lay, average person, not educated expert. Thanks for being here. You can have the excuse.
Up until the very last question, that was a good testimony in favor of Afroman. The answer to the last question could go either way, although I believe it favors the plaintiff.
Go ahead, Mr. Osborne.
Your Honor, I'd ask for a short 10-minute break so I can talk with Mr. Foreman. Based upon the ruling in the Rule 50, I want to juggle some of my witnesses, make some corrections to that, as I had anticipated a different verdict due to the evidence, or different ruling due to the evidence, so I'm going to need to shift for that. I'd like 10 minutes to consult with my client to strategize on that.
Comments, Mr. Klingler?
No, I have no objection to that, Judge.
You're doing well managing your time. I think that's a good idea. I would like to know how I'm doing with getting the jury on schedule.
Your Honor, that's why I want to strategize, see how we can hopefully.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what you're saying. Take a break, go back to the jury room, stay there if you would please. Short break will be helpful.
Do.
The plaintiff also, because of that burden of proof, gets a privilege. So they get not only the first word, but they get the last word. So Mr. Klingler would start, Mr. Osborne would go second, and then Mr. Klingler would get the last word. Not because of favoritism or anything else, but because of the burden of proof. Then at that particular point in time, we'll give you jury instructions. And I'm going to take a break after their arguments because I need to make a few copies for the lawyers to read while I read. We give the instructions to you in writing, but I always like it when they can read over my shoulder because sometimes I put two words in different order and it changes the meaning. So then we have like three people reading to make sure it comes out to you right. So we'll hear their closing arguments, take a short break, you'll get the instructions, and then we'll turn you loose. Go ahead, Mr. Klingler.
Your Honor, if I may, procedurally, I'd like to renew my motion for the record.
Thank you. Very appropriate. With regard to the false light claims, the court overrules the motion. Outside the presence of the jury, I can give you a little bit more of the why. But when I give deference to the evidence and construe it in favor, especially with regard to highly offensive and reasonable juror, reasonable public perception, like those clearly become fact issues to weigh, which I shouldn't do. So as a matter of law, I couldn't dismiss the claims. There's at least enough evidence when I construe the plaintiff's evidence in their favor to get past the Rule 50 motion. But you are spot on to remind me to do that.
Your Honor, there's also another matter we need to clean up. We probably should do at the sidebar before we go into oral arguments.
Okay. I'd like to clean things up.
My bad.
In their argument. So like, the chicken scratching stuff that we've been doing in the past is distracting. So we're gonna let me do my work. It's 30 minutes that we need. So we'll go take a coffee break, just stay back there. Instead of me doing it the other way, we'll just take the break now for the jury instructions.
Can't smoke, can we smoke?
Can we
Leon
smoke?
doesn't like irritable jurors. So you
So
should
that's a
go-
yes.
Do you like irritable
That's a
jurors?
yes.
Prefer not to have.
Okay, that's all. Yeah, go take a break.
All right, I get my nicotine, which is completely understandable, logical, everything. All right. Thought Afroman gets back on the stand. I thought they might go straight into closing here. All right, here's his packets that he was talking about.
My client, if they should be found.
Hold on.
Figures because Judge McBride decided that. So in the instructions, I've taken prior decisions of law where necessary and put them in. And you didn't deal with that, but sometimes I have to tell the jury how we got to where we are. That becomes instruction of law. The law of the case goes into the instructions. So but I don't explain it to them. I'm just saying to the record, I took prior judicial law of the case findings.
Okay, I have no idea where the judge is going with this or what's in that packet, but I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to get an objection from the defense.
And slotted it in where necessary, because that's what we always do. Sound right, Mr. Osborne?
Your Honor, I have no objection.
No objection, Judge.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Off the record, you want to start?
I would love it if we did.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir. We're off the record.
All right, maybe my new nickname is Wrong Again.
Well, we have the two housekeeping things. I have to renew my verdict, and then we have to also discuss the music company.
Okay. Back on the record.
We're back on the record.
Okay, so 2 points came up. You wanted to renew your motion for Rule 50
Yes.
dismissal, which the court will overrule. Mr. Klingler responded to your inquiry about the Access Incorporated.
Yes, Your Honor, just for the sake of the record, we had a telephone conference on this, we had discussed this issue. They had not pled, they are technically in default of the answer. During that telephone conference, which was not on the records, we discussed what would happen with that. Mr. Klingler said he would evaluate it. We are now about ready to do closing statements. No evidence has been presented against him. Mr. Klingler has not asked for a default judgment. He seems to be wanting to put everything on my client, which is very strange why when he has a default he wouldn't make a motion for such. But we would ask that the record be cleaned up in that issue.
Yeah, I'm going to clean up the record, and we are willing to dismiss that party from the case.
Media Access Incorporated.
Yes.
We've registered an objection to him not doing a directed verdict, doing a default verdict on that, and therefore increasing damages upon my client if they should be found.
Noted. I think he gets to own his own complaint, so I just have to follow his lead. But I get what you're saying, and
I can
appreciate
argue
your-
for mitigation of attorney fees and stuff that he has done.
No, if it gets to that, if it gets to that, that's not a part of the jury's deliberation.
I just have to, I'm trying to think a step ahead.
I like that. Off the record, please. Go ahead and you with Mr. Bailiff.
Time to go. See, I knew that. I waited the extra 30 seconds.
You got 6 minutes for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Have a seat. But actually, it was about 45 minutes, so I didn't gauge my time very well, but thank you for your patience. We are moving ahead, as you know, so most people don't know about that, but I try to at least respect your time and tell you what we're doing. We made it through, like, the corrections to the jury instructions. Like, I've been trying to educate you all the way through. The jury instructions are the textbook at the end. So the lawyers had a chance to drill those down. As I said before, closing arguments are the attorney's argument about what they think the evidence means and how you should do whatever it is they think you should do. So they go first, Mr. Klingler, then Mr. Osborne, then Mr. Klingler. There's like a total of 35 minutes. So I'm going to think 20, 35, 15. But Mr. Klingler can kind of manipulate his time depending on how he wants to do it. So in an hour, you'll be talking to me for about 30 minutes of instructions before you start your deliberations. That's what's ahead of you. If you take notes, just write down argument, not evidence. Go ahead, Mr. Klingler.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, sorry about the dog in the background. All right, keep track of this one. I couldn't quite hear what they said during that break. Something was dismissed. I'm not sure what it was. It might have been one of the plaintiffs altogether, because it appears that there's 7 plaintiffs, and I know I corrected the last record by saying there's 4, but I'm not sure. All right, so we're gonna keep score. We're gonna the plaintiff's attorney has to make a certain point and touch on every single one of those plaintiffs, where the defense attorney could probably just defend his client as a whole and not touch on each one of those. Although I'm not a lawyer, however, we'll see how this plays out. But just keep score. And then if you think that the plaintiff should be awarded monies, how much should they be awarded?
Morning, folks. When this trial started, I told you it was about intentional lies that are designed to hurt people. It's not about freedom of speech. It's about defamation. It's about false light defamation, intentional lies designed to hurt people. You've heard all the evidence. You've seen the witnesses. I'm not going to go over it. But I will say a few things to underscore what I think is most important for you to keep in mind as this case is turned over to you, from me, from the plaintiffs, to you. Mr. Foreman perpetuated lies intentionally, repeatedly, over 3.5 years on the internet about these 7 brave deputy sheriffs who've lived in this county for years, risked their lives for this county for years, done their job, been in the community for many, many years. Mr. Foreman did it intentionally. Mr. Foreman knew that what he posted on the internet were lies. He knew there was no theft. He knew there was no sex with Randy Walters' wife. And he certainly knew all of the stuff he's repeatedly posted about Lisa Phillips up until Friday and probably later were lies too. What are we going to do about that? Mr. Foreman told you from the witness stand, there's nothing we can do to stop him because he has freedom of speech to lie about people intentionally. During jury selection, we talked about that. And you all agreed that it's not okay to tell an intentional lie about someone that hurts them. We all agreed. And the judge is going to tell you that in the law that he gives you. So Mr. Foreman is legally wrong when he says he has free speech to tell harmful lies about people and get away with it. That's just legally wrong. You also told me in jury selection that even if somebody does something to you that hurts you, that you think is wrong, like a search warrant execution that you think was unfair, even if somebody does that to you, you told me, we all agreed, that that doesn't justify telling intentional lies designed to hurt people. That's what you think. That's what the community thinks. That's what decent people think. But Mr. Foreman thinks it's okay to do what he's done over 3.5 years because they executed a search warrant that broke down his door and disconnected his cameras. You heard from the witness stand from Mr. Foreman the callous indifference that he showed to what he's done, the harm he's done. It's imprinted in your minds, I'm sure, like it is in mine, the tears, the agony from some of these witnesses. Don't forget that when you're back in the jury room. That's what this case is about. You are here because you agreed to be here. You showed up on the first day. Not everybody does. A lot of people don't respond to their summons. You did. I asked you, do you want to be on this
Suckers.
jury? And you all said, yes, I agreed to be on this jury. You're all here now in this place, in this courtroom, for a reason. And I believe there's a power higher than us that brought you here today to do this job, and that you are the chosen people to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. There's not going to be another trial. There's not going to be a second chance. This is the day to decide whether Mr. Foreman gets away with what he's done and whether these plaintiffs deserve something to make up for what they've been through, and whether the community is told that what he did is unacceptable. It's not okay. We talked about different kinds of damages. There's not going to be economic damages in this case. There's no doctor bills. There's no damaged property. There's damage to reputation. There's pain and suffering. There's public humiliation. There's everything you saw and heard from these detectives from the witness stand. And the only thing you can do as a jury to decide this case is to render a verdict of money that somehow stands in, somehow represents the harm that these deputy sheriffs have been put through over 3.5 years. That's all you can do. You can't issue an order that says stop. You can't issue an order that says, say you're sorry. All you can do is issue a verdict for an amount that fairly stands in, represents what they've been through, what they've lost. No one else is going to do it. The judge isn't going to do it. Court of Appeals isn't going to do it. It's your job. And you're the people meant to do it. Now, I told you in jury selection, if we got to this point, I'd try to give you some ideas about how to evaluate what kind of verdict might make sense in this case. I told you then, and I'll tell you now, there's no formula. There's no easy answer, but there is an answer. And it's the answer that you folks decide among yourselves fairly represents the injuries that these deputies have suffered. And I'll start by posing this question. Do you think that if there had been an advertisement in some newspaper that said, we will give you $2 million if you are willing to go through what Lisa Phillips has been through for the last 3.5 years? Would you take that deal? Do you think she would have taken that deal? Yeah, $2 million, that's a, maybe I'll go through that. Of course not. Do you think Randy Walters, do you think Brian Newland, do you think any of these deputies would have accepted some amount of money in order to go through, in exchange for going through what they've been through? I don't think so. And I think you know nothing is worth going through what they've been through. And, of course,
well, he had to touch on all the plaintiffs. The emphasis again is on Lisa, as we expected. But he didn't leave a lot to say for the others. However, I'm sure he'll still add something in there. But like I said, if you're keeping score, it's Lisa maybe 1, and the rest of the plaintiffs maybe 0.
he says he's not going to stop. He says nothing can stop him. Maybe something can stop him if you tell him through your verdict that he needs to stop. I'm going to tell you what I believe is a fair verdict for these plaintiffs. And it's up to you, of course, again, to make the decision. But I would ask you, I'm going to ask you, and there's a verdict form which, excuse me 1 minute. folks, I'm going to show you these forms that you're going to be filling out, just so you're familiar with them. This is just an example. You're going to have a different form for each of these plaintiffs, okay? This one happens to be a verdict form for Lisa Phillips. And I believe the evidence is overwhelming that you'll find in favor of Lisa Phillips. This happens to be her false light claim. There's a separate claim for defamation, a separate form for defamation, and you'll see the jury instructions. Judge Hine has already talked some about that with you. So this is just an example of the verdict form that I'm going to ask you all to sign in favor of Lisa Phillips and all of the plaintiffs on their false light and their defamation claims. Now, there's another form called an interrogatory, and I'm just showing you Lisa Phillips's form. And it says, we, the jury, find damages for plaintiff as follows. And then it gives a little description of the kind of damages. And there's a line for your decision, and there's signature lines for each of you to sign. For Lisa Phillips, I'm not going to show you every form. For Lisa Phillips, folks, I'm asking you to put $1.5 million in that verdict form. $1.5 million for Lisa Phillips from what she's been through for 3.5 years. May be going through for who knows how long. For Brian Newland, I'm asking you to issue a verdict for $1 million for what he's been through with his family, the loss of his dream job here in Adams County. For Randy Walters, I'm asking you for a verdict of $1 million for what he's been through with the allegations and vile videos about his wife. For the other 4 plaintiffs, Sean Grooms,
There are
Sean
7.
Cooley, Justin Cooley, and Mike Estep.
All right, what number is he going to say? I'm going with $400,000.
I'm asking you for a total for all 4 of them of $400,000 divided among them.
Oh, I thought he was going to go 400
you
each.
see fit based on their testimony.
Okay, I think it's weighted appropriately based on the evidence presented and the testimonies given, mostly. The third person mentioned, I don't know if you put them in the $1 million category or not. That is assuming that you see their perspective. Me personally, I'm favoring the defense. So I think 0, if I award any money, it's going to be toward Lisa. But for, the way I view the Constitution and officers in the scope of their duty relative to the way the content was initially discovered, I think it should be $0 for all of them, obviously. But I think he weighted it appropriately. Mostly.
You, of course, can award less. You can issue a verdict for more. That's what I'm asking you to say in your verdict form based on this testimony. Now, let me close my remarks by looking into the future here and looking at the future if there's a verdict for the plaintiffs and you award the plaintiffs a fair amount of money. What happens? The plaintiffs are vindicated. The court of public opinion out there, the press, which I know you haven't been looking at, they don't know the facts. You know the facts. And a verdict for the plaintiff will say,
Well, we know the facts because we watched it all in grammar school.
they were wronged, he was wrong. A verdict for the plaintiffs will make up in some way for what they've been through. A verdict for the plaintiffs will say that we don't condone, we don't approve, you can't get away with what Mr. Foreman's done. Not in this community, not in this country. That's not freedom of speech where we live. That's what a verdict for the plaintiffs will say. Let's look at another possible future if there were to be a verdict for the defendant, or if there were to be a verdict with a small amount of money attached to it. In that case, in that world, in that future, the world is told what he did is okay. What they went through is no big deal. We don't really care. We think it's fine. That's what a verdict for the defendant or a small verdict would say. They would go home subject to even more ridicule. Yeah, you took him on and you lost. See what he did was fine. I don't have to tell you, you know, that's not the message we want to send. It's not the message you want to send. Folks, I'm done. I've done all I can. These folks called me 3 years ago now and asked, what can we do to stop this? And here we are today. I've done what I can. They've done what they can. They've suffered through the publicity. They could have stopped this case at any time if they would have kowtowed to the pressure, public humiliation that Mr. Foreman continued to put them through, but they didn't. They bravely stood behind their case and their right not to be dragged through the mud with lies in the media. They've done all they can. And now I am giving their case and this decision to you. It's out of my hands. You have to decide what to say to Mr. Foreman and what to say to the community about what he's done and the effects that it's had on these folks. I have full confidence, I fully trust you to make the right decision, to make a fair decision, and to come back with a verdict that's fair for each one of these plaintiffs and that tells the community what you really think about this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. You have 11 minutes after that. And Mr. Osborne?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. This has been a long 3 days. It took a second for me to even count the number. It's been so long. A lot's happened. You've done your duty as jurors. You've paid attention to the evidence. I'm proud of that. What makes our country great is you have the right to have a jury trial. You have the right to people in the community to see this, weigh the evidence, and make a decision. And I'm proud that you guys are here and doing that. We started this time, I talked about this case was about freedom of speech. But let's talk about what it's also about. It's also about music. Not all music is tasteful. Not everybody likes all music. There's some songs I hate. I think we can find plenty of people that find songs they do not like. But Mr. Foreman, Joe is a rapper and comedian. It's what he's done his whole life is rap, make songs. We got to think of what rap is, because music does not exist in a vacuum. Music evolves over time. Take a look at jazz. It's evolved. At one time, it was distinct in a certain subculture, and it has now expanded. Rap is the same. Rap started out as a means for people to express social commentary, opinions through entertainment. Look at the song by NWA. What do they call it? Fuck the Police? I think I said that right. It's a social commentary on what was going on in their lives. Their personal effect, the personal things happening to them, combined with entertainment, which unfortunately is exaggeration. Opinion, nothing of fact in that song. It's a commentary on society. And so when you look at rap, you see that over and over again. I had my secretary print me a couple songs, rap songs, while I was pouring a cup of coffee. And the first one was Carly B, WAP. I find it bad to say what WAP means, but it's a popular song. I think it's somewhat
It'd be funny if they backed this up by playing WAP.
derogatory. But then again, I'm not the audience for that song, and I know that. I know nothing in that song. Nothing talking about is true. I know it's entertainment. I know it's social commentary. Miss Grooms testified even her students knew that at a young age. The same thing I knew when I was watching Johnny Carson, The Late Night Show, and SNL, Saturday Night Live, with my grandfather when I was a kid. That's all entertainment. They make fun of everybody for entertainment. And some of it is a social commentary. But it is not fact. And everybody knows that. Nobody looks at Lil Wayne's song Pussy Monster and says there's a monster in that song. Everybody knows it's exaggeration for entertainment. Is he commenting on something? Sure. But it's not fact. And I can keep going. Megan Thee Stallion with sex talk. I mean,
Three
it just
Stallion.
goes on. They use derogatory language. It's designed to entertain. Drew Hastings, former mayor of Hillsborough, was a comedian. I got to go to one of his stand-ups. Some of it was funny, some of it wasn't. Some of his jokes, like those of Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, some of them are not tasteful, but they're still jokes. They're not facts. And we know that. That's what a reasonable person listening to that would understand. And that's the point. This is not a vacuum. We don't live in a vacuum. Let's face it, if we lived in a vacuum, we'd all be dead because we couldn't breathe. So we live in a world full of everything, where we see things. We watch SNL. We know it's entertainment. We know it's going to pick on people. We understand that they're picking on public officials. Well, they picked on Joe. They pick on Donald Trump all the time, Sleepy Joe. I mean, go down the list, even Teflon Ron was made fun of. So as you go back, nobody thinks that's fact. Nobody's going to take it that way. When they post their clips on YouTube, when they post their clips on Facebook, people don't look at it and go, that's the truth. No, they understand it's comedy. They understand they're going to talk about it going forward. And if you look at his posts, you see the little signs of that too. Iteration. Things that you see in a song. I mean, because after all, you know, a song's catchy, right? It has a beat, song, you know, words rhyme. You know, she thinks my tractor's sexy, and, you know, it sticks with you. When we listen to Lemon Pound Cake, you heard the iteration. You heard how it came together as entertainment. So we don't exist in a vacuum, and a reasonable person doesn't exist in a vacuum. As the judge has said, you are a reasonable people. You get to decide what's reasonable, which means you get to use your experience. You get to use your understanding of what those are, of your understanding of Joe, of your understanding of rap music, music in general. I'm not going to sit here and say that these 7 people were happy about what happened to them. I'm not going to say that. That'd be stupid. But what I am going to say is they are public officials. We see it on the news all the time, public officials made fun of. Let's go back to voir dire. During my voir dire, we talked about, with the one juror that's gone, we talked about that, yes, I ran for public office. She agreed I put myself out as a public official. She agreed that it was an opinion when someone called me a baby killer. Even our witnesses on the stand, I asked that question. They said a crooked defense attorney is not a vine, it's a matter of opinion. Crooked cops, dirty defense attorneys. Oh wait, one witness did want to say I might not have taken a shower. But those are all opinions, exaggerations, not statements of fact. And we know that. And that's why public officials are held to a higher standard, because that standard is what is expected of them as subjecting themselves to public scrutiny. They all testified that people have criticized their work. I mean, after all, we look at the search. There is, even Mr. Newland admitted it wasn't perfect. I think we can see from how the money was handled, the investigation, I would have liked to have seen a more thorough job myself. I mean, we have a chain of custody, the money that just leaves it laying there. Mr. Newland didn't know that. We have an unsealed evidence bag. We have 10% of all evidence, money evidence in the Adams County evidence locker miscounted. And then, keep in mind that miscount on those is less than what is alleged to miss here. We got people saying we had a miscount, yet they can't even bother to notify the court in an official document that they made a mistake. Just let it ride. As far as the public record knows, which they never corrected, Mr. Foreman never got back all of his money. They want to talk about an investigation, but they can't even put in a single piece of paper to correct his mistake. I don't know if I call that lazy or what. But I think it goes to what you consider a fact. Because what is a fact? We can't always know what a fact is. A fact is something you can disprove, right? But can we truly disprove that? Looking at all the evidence, there is questions. If there's questions, it's not a fact. Now, people will form opinions based on that. I formed an opinion. I imagine everybody here's formed an opinion. We know that they formed an opinion because they didn't like being called a thief. So that was their opinion. But people are allowed to have opinions. People are allowed to express them. What people are expressing when they call them thief is not a literal statement. It is not a fact. It is a social commentary on the fact that they didn't do things correctly. And they can't even articulate how they could fix it. That is a social commentary if I ever heard one. They don't like it? That's not their choice to like it or not. They're public officials. They're going to be held to higher standards. Their work's going to be criticized. I mean, that's just what happens when you're a public official. No reasonable person would expect a police officer not to be criticized. They've all been called names before. Has it affected them personally? Yes. Ms. Grooms testified it made no difference in her life. Her kids didn't take it seriously. And she's taught for damn near 30 years. But they seem to take it seriously. And I come back to Mr. Grooms. He's worried about going out on a call and being shot. Now, maybe I'm old-fashioned. But if I'm going out on a call, I'm worried about getting shot, I'm going to call my wife and tell her to be safe. Not sit here and go, I'm worried about me. That's not what you do. You take care of your family. Mr. Walters wanted to point that out. That just goes to show us he didn't take it seriously. Now, I'm not going to say they're not afraid. Anytime they go on a call, the highway patrol will tell you scariest thing's a traffic stop. You know nothing about the person. You're there by yourself, and things can change in an instant. Is that scary? Fuck yeah. I'd be scared. But if you're truly scared, you take the steps for it. You start having your family do stuff. You start doing that. If you believe what you're saying, you take the steps towards it. You didn't take the steps. No one else talked about how they took the steps either, did they? And why does that matter? Because a reasonable person is going to look at that. After all, let's go back to me not taking a shower. How would you know I didn't take a shower? Hair clumpy, probably matted, probably got dirt all over me. That's how you would see. That's how you would prove if that's an opinion or fact. Now, even then you might say Dave just fell in the mud. But no reasonable person would take it in the vacuum. And I want you to think about everything in context. What rap is music, how it's entertainment, how the language works on it, how jokes are made. I want you to think back to that, because that colors how you see it. I love picking on Joe. He's a good sport for it. Look at that suit. Does this look like a man who thinks that everybody's going to assume that everything he's saying is fact? I mean, he's like a comedian. He exaggerates for the sake of entertainment. That's who he is. I'm not going to say it's tasteful to everyone, but some people do find it entertaining. I asked an important question about them. I said, do you believe everything in the newspaper? No. Do you believe everything you read on the internet? No. We all know that to be true. A reasonable person knows that. People can post opinions, social commentary, and hurtful things all over the internet. And it is just to be expected. That's why we are supposed to use our own filter, use our common sense, use our experiences in life. So while hurtful, it was not fact. It was music, entertainment. Stuff that no reasonable person would understand. Especially not a public official, because we see it on TV all the time. We see it on the internet. You see it on Facebook. Sometimes people want to turn off Facebook because there's so much political commentary and stuff. But that's expected. Do I expect everything I read's fact? I don't even think most of it's fact. I think it's everybody's opinion, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and it stinks. But that doesn't mean they can't have them. That doesn't mean they can't express them, and that doesn't mean they can't make a song about it. Truth is a defense. That's why we talked about the theft. That's why we showed all that. because I wanted you to see how the money was handled. There's a lot of confusion around it, and for that reason. Before I get to another point, I want to address something that's bouncing around my head. Bob says, what does this message send if you find for Mr. Foreman? I rephrase that question a little differently. What does this message send if we find that music and social commentary, while maybe not the most tasteful thing in the world, is silenced because a public official, while hurt by it, yes, unhappy by it, yes, pissed off, yes, emotional, yes. What opinion does that sound? I mean, if you can sue people, music artists, comedians, to shut them down, that's what we're looking at here. I'm sorry they feel the way they do. But there's a certain amount that you have to take as a public official. It's part of the duties as a job. As we talked about during voir dire, as I've talked about them being called a baby killer, there's certain things you take and you move on. It's part of the job. The plaintiff.
And that I think is why Afroman should win this. I think the defense attorney nailed every point. Oh God, hold on.
Or I should say, Bob talks about how they wanted it to stop. Where was the certified cease and desist letter? Where was all this done? None of that was done until after they started the lawsuit. Until after they brought it to court to make it stop. That's what they wanted to make.
Okay, so NCR was right. Sorry, it's not my last point because my son walked in and he's loud. Yeah, they didn't send a cease and desist until after they started the lawsuit. Interesting. They made it seem differently. At least it seemed that way to me.
Make it stop. Yet they ask for money. The commentary on them is nebulous at best. You can see that when you look at it. We have Beetle Bailey, Gomer Pyle, Colonel King Kong Bundy. Some of these names are not as bad as others, yes, but they're all for artistic purpose. They're all for jokes. They're all for entertainment. This is not to paint them in a real life. No reasonable person would think that. It's kind of interesting because even Mr. Newland agreed that when he was called a pedophile by Mr. Foreman, yes, that is a horrible thing to call a person. But even he said it was Mr. Foreman's opinion. So he didn't believe it was a fact. If your own witness doesn't believe it's a fact, how can a reasonable person find it's a fact? Bob went to great lengths to say nothing will stop him. Shows us where we're at. We got to stop his expression. We got to stop entertainment. We got to stop exaggeration. That's what Bob's talking about. What chilling effect does that have on the world we live in? Think about it. You don't like what a commissioner does. You don't like what our prosecutor does. You don't like what any public official does, and you make a joke, and you're drugging the court. It may not have been a tasteful joke. It may have been a bad joke. It may have been the greatest joke ever. But what we're saying is if they don't like it, we're back here. What does that say to you, freedom of speech? What does that say to the world we live in? That's what this case is about. And Bob knows that. That's why he mentions it. That's why when you look at defamation and the jury instructions, you'll see that the first element of it is a statement. Portrayal of fact. Has to be portrayed as fact. No music video portrays as a fact. I don't watch Fuck Those Police and turn around and say, you know what, that's a fact. No. I say that's a song and it's entertainment and move on. Sometimes I try to figure out what the words mean, you know, what kind they're getting at, but I don't expect them to present a fact. Fourth element is the proximate cause. It's an interesting question there, because you'll get the definition of causation in proximate. And we never talked about that really during the trial, and it's going to be something that I want to discuss. They talked about getting phone calls. None of those posts. Joe never said, call them and tell them this. Mr. Cooley testified that they mailed pound cakes to the office. Joe never said send them a lemon pound cake. These are things that other people have done. Joe never directed them to do it. He didn't cause it. He made a joke. He cannot control how people take it. What they do, he's not that. All he can do is make a joke, make a song. So that's something to consider. Was he the proximate cause, or was it someone else? I want you to understand when they get to the question of malice, if you get that far, it has to be actual malice. Public officials, it's a higher standard. Why? Because we hold public officials to a high standard. Let's talk about the false light. That's their second cause of action. That says that a reasonable person would be justified in the eyes of the community, feeling seriously offended and aggrieved. I want you to go in on the eyes of the community. They want to say people's humiliating them, calling them names. The reality is a reasonable person in the eyes of the community is going to say, it's a song. It's a joke. I was flabbergasted to hear it myself, that they even thought it was a joke before they brought the lawsuit. Go to a Halloween party and bring a lemon pound cake. That, I almost have no words for that, honestly, because I get, we're hurt, but it's a joke. Which one is it? So a reasonable person in the eyes of the community would understand it's a joke. Mr. Estep testified about the joke of the shirt. We got the pound cake joke. There's various jokes for this. This was not as negative. This has not changed their view in the eyes of the community, because your reputation, which is what they claim is hurt, your reputation is like a shirt. You eat a hot dog, you drop mustard on it, you get stains on your shirt. Nobody's reputation is clean. Everything you do affects your reputation. The way you perform your job affects your reputation. They all admitted to that on the stand, because I asked that question. They all said it does. How they counted that money affects their reputation. People can form opinions based on how they did their job and criticize them on it. That's a right we have. You have to forgive me, I have to flip through these some. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare as things change on the fly. I think as you go back and deliberate, take a look at all the exhibits, analyze it in the context of music, entertainment, opinion, social commentary. It's not a fact. And if you look at it, you can see that. Like I said, it may not be tasteful, may not be nice, but even SNL's not nice. South Park's not nice. These things are social commentaries, jokes, entertainment, and some of them are not nice. But you don't have to like everything. You don't have to like everything said about you, and you don't have the right to tell everybody that everything said about you should be sued for, especially if you're a public official. As such, I ask you to deliver a verdict in Joe's favor on all claims. I ask that because when you look at it, no reasonable person could see it as a fact. No reasonable person could see it as even false light. The community, if they called him, if people called him, that's because the social commentary resonated with someone, resonated with what people experienced in the world. We've lived through a turbulent year, so we've all seen on the news what people are experiencing all over the country. Social commentary resonates because of that. That doesn't make him the proximate cause. That shows a deeper concern in our country that we should be addressing, not sitting here trying to decide if a music video is a fact or not. That's what's at issue here. And I'm confident as you go back in deliberations, you'll come to that conclusion too. And with that, I thank you again for your service, because it is not easy, and what you're about to do is not easy. It takes time and deliberation. It takes hard work. And I appreciate that you guys are willing to do it. And I reiterate again, that's what makes us a great country. Thank you very much.
Mr. Osborne? Go ahead, Mr. Flanagan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing Mr. Osborne said about sexually explicit songs out in society refer to specific people in the community like the songs that are at issue here. It's not the same thing. We all know that. These weren't opinions. Mr. Foreman didn't say, in my opinion, Brian Newland is a pedophile. In my opinion, they're all thieves. In my opinion, I fucked his wife doggy style. He said it like they were facts. And I think Judge Hine is going to instruct you, based on everything that's happened so far, that these were not opinions, they were stated as fact, and your job is to decide whether those facts were true or not. And we know they're not. The case isn't about lemon pound cake. It's about intentional lies designed to hurt people, and they hurt people. If somebody in the jury room says, well, what about his First Amendment rights? You know, and the law tells you, that doesn't allow lies that hurt people. If someone tells you it's just artistic expression, he ought to be free to say what he wants, the answer is he's not allowed to wrap up harmful lies into songs, so-called art, put them out there and get away with it. The packaging of the lie doesn't make it okay. The message was clear. And Mr. Foreman doesn't get to wrap himself in the American flag and say, you can't touch me, I can say what I want, no matter how untrue it is, no matter how much pain it causes people, no matter for how long, because I have freedom of speech. He can't do that. I'm confident you'll tell him he can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flanagan. Let me acknowledge Mr. Osborne.
Your Honor, I didn't mean to interrupt you. One thing is I was going to ask before we read the jury instructions if I could use, if we have a restroom break for that, because I know it's going to take some time to read them.
Everybody's going to stand in their seat and stretch. Nobody's going to leave the room but you. because you're pretty prompt with that, so go for it.
Thank you.
I'll just stand up, blood flowing. Oh, you're on my team. When the case comes in the door. And then the court refines the instructions to account for the conduct of the trial. So to the extent that they might have gotten the instructions very quickly this morning, it's not that they didn't know it, it's the refinements, the little tweaks along the way, that's what they're talking about. But I want to thank them because they did good.
Normally, I'd probably skip this part,
Making it
but
possible for me to get to the point where I can give these
I
instructions.
think the jury is still out on the judge.
The court has the legal duty to prepare the instructions of law. You've heard the attorney's statements, arguments, you've heard the evidence from the witnesses. The court's duty is to instruct you on the law. And then you have a legal obligation to accept the instructions the way they're given to you. It's your sworn duty to do that. You cannot apply what you think the law ought to be. You're obedient, as I am obedient, to the rules of the law. A person who claims that certain facts exist, in this case, opinion, I love it when you guys show up, because I don't have to decide. It's like I always try to make sure I'm neutral in my facial expressions and my voice tone, but sometimes I just don't get that done. An important role for the jurors is to...
All right, I think we get the point. Jury took until about 6:30-ish Eastern time to deliberate. I think that translates to somewhere around the neighborhood of 3-4 hours, maybe more, maybe less. Here's the verdict. Oh, by the way, what do you think? Here's what I think. I know what the verdict is by now. I'm a little behind in the case. I truly believe that Afroman is going to lose this, and I believe that if I believe that the jury is gonna. I don't know if they're gonna award the whole thing, but I believe that not everybody's entitled to money here, especially the three or four people to split the $400,000. To be honest with you, I think that they're the guy that they called the pedophile. Maybe the jury would find money for him, but I don't think $1.5 million. And if they give anybody the full amount, it would be Lisa. Just mainly because of the extra. It was a little extra. However, that's not what I think should happen. What I think should happen, especially if you consider shows like South Park and a ton of other stuff. I think the jury should award no money, especially as reference that public officials are held to a higher standard. That the original criticism came from them performing their duties in the scope of their work. And most of the testimony had a lot to do with well, the kids at school said to my kid. So for the sake of South Park and free speech and just the Constitution, which is written for the people to be able, in some aspects of the Constitution, to be able to criticize the government, especially in Afroman's case where he has a specific way he does things, and this is probably something to expect if you know him, and I don't. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Shit, where is it? Oh yeah, check out the coat though. Coat on the suit. Everybody's coming back in. I probably should have just got to the spot. There's those packets. Everybody's standing. All right, the packets are basically the verdict, which I believe lists every one of the plaintiffs, and then the judge is going to check them for signatures.
So the court was informed the jury reached a verdict, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you'll hand the verdict forms to the bailiff, you'll hand them to me so I can take a look at them. I looked at the form of the papers, essentially to see if they're properly signed. Well, that's the next thing that happens. Thank you.
Now this is
In
gonna
all
work.
circumstances, the jury finds in favor of the defendant, no plaintiff verdict prevailed. So the matter will be concluded with defense verdicts.
He wins.
Thank you,
Holy
Mr.
cow.
Klingler. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Thank you to the court staff and the Sheriff's Department for security in the building. And we'll go ahead and stand adjournment.
All right, I'm looking at the faces. All right, let's see if we can follow him on the way out.
You're welcome.
Afroman wins. I did not think that was gonna happen. Ooh, he's getting some stares by a guy on the left. Linda. Oh, there's a peek by Linda. Straight and to the point with Afroman.
You guys want to go on into the jury room?
Go ahead and relax, whatever it is you need.
I'll get your coat.
Yep. Have the jury do that, but have them go back into their room.
You guys
Hopefully
don't
they
mind
weren't
that.
counting their money already.
We'll go up and get you, okay?
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I was getting a glare from the left side. At least it feels like one. There's the reaction as instructed by the judge. Oh, come on.
Everybody is excused.
That's what we're waiting for. Literally, that's what we're waiting for. I was like,
All you had to do was be polite and talk to me.
My bad. Oh, goes the right new body cam. All right, what do you think? I thought that trial was insane. That was nuts. Now it definitely started here, and day one was crazy. If you want to watch any part of that trial, watch day one. Day one was absolutely nuts. Not saying the rest of it was, but day one was insane. What do you think? Was it the right call? I think so. I think even if Afroman lost this, he would have won in appellate court. He should have won in appellate court based on the First Amendment, especially with the precedents that still exist relative to the wording of the Constitution. Now, at one point, I thought for sure he was going to lose, and I still thought he was going to lose at the point of the verdict, but I don't think he was going to lose in totality. I thought he's going to lose to the jury, and then he was going to win in appellate court. He's got a good lawyer. I don't think the lawyer did anything really to impress me. But then again, he did what he needed to do. I think he had a great close. I think he hit on the points that he needed to hit on, where I think the plaintiff's attorney might have been counting money too. I think that, when he skimmed on a lot of details. He focused on Linda or Lisa. He skimmed on Linda or Lisa. Or he skimmed on everybody but Linda or Lisa, I should say. And I thought that if anybody should be awarded money from the jury, it would have been her. But that was a shit show. Imagine, but imagine if they